Out in the middle of the Nevadan high desert, Highway 50 cuts through the dry, lonely landscape. This highway is well known as the loneliest highway in America. There is a particular episode of Top Gear where James, Jeremy, and Richard took 50 on their way to Utah, where Jeremy got so bored he ended up counting the number of stitches on the door panel of his Corvette CR1. I distinctly remember exactly what stretch of highway he was on, as I have driven it previously. Anyways, I got my license about 6 months ago, and simultaneously so did my best friend. Being teenagers, we love the thrill of driving with no actual destination. We live around 45 minutes away from Dayton, and his family owns an 850-acre property in Mount House. He owns a 1992 Mercedes 300 GE, and I own a 2000 Nissan Frontier, and we often go out on both on-road and off-road adventures while camping. When we go down there, it's often without parental supervision, so we hop in my truck and head out to 50, just exploring and relaxing, listening to rap from the likes of MF Doom and Quasimodo. No drinking or smoking though. Him and I are extremely against it for the reasons that both of us had seen the tolls it takes on the health of our classmates. We purely did it to satiate our curiosity of what the world holds, but now that curiosity has only been deepened. About 3 weeks ago, we took what we thought was going to be a regular late night drive. My friend, who I'll call James, was borderline falling asleep after driving for 3 hours on 50. I was also feeling the fog of sleepiness, but I had to focus on the road. I vividly remember that at some point the music had cut off because a phone signal out in the middle of nowhere was non-existent, and the road noise combined with a buzzy, consistent drone from my Frontier's little 4-cylinder seemed to become louder with every passing second. About 3 hours outside of Eureka, James gasped with fright, suddenly looked at me more awake than he did the entire night. "What's up, man? Why do you look downright terrified?" I asked. "I think you just fucking hit someone," he said with pure shock. "No, James, that's not possible. I've been driving for the past 5 hours and I haven't seen a single living thing," I argued back. "Dude, pull the fuck over and we'll see how fucked up your bumper is," he spat at me. "Calm down, man, you're being really weird. I would have known if I had hit someone." "Dude, just pull over so I can check. I pray to God you didn't hit anyone or else we're fucked." "Alright, but you're acting extremely paranoid." So we pulled over, mostly because I wanted to appease James' concerns. I pulled off near a mile marker, though I can't remember which one. Jay practically leapt out to see the damage and was extremely confused to see everything still intact and bloodless. I stepped out and said, "I told you I didn't hit anyone, dude." "What? I could have sworn..." James faltered. "James, let's just get back to the property so we can sleep." Okay. He walked himself back into the warm embrace of the truck's passenger seat and slumped over. I stayed outside to admire how bright the stars were. Out here, there wasn't a drop of light pollution. It was stunning. I remember thinking, damn, I should have brought my camera out. I joined James in my truck a couple of minutes later, and we were off to the road again. The wind had picked up about an hour later. We were getting close to the property again, about an hour and a half out. We had passed Middlegate about an hour ago and were about 45 minutes away from Fallon. James was sound asleep and I was starting to get a little bit tired. Luckily, we brought the lifeblood of most teenagers, otherwise known as peach Red Bulls. I was enjoying the sweet sour flavor, already feeling a little bit more awake. It was extremely desolate. I couldn't help but think, if I broke down out here, I'd be absolutely fucked. As of right on cue, the truck suddenly shut off. All the warning lights lit up and I lost power to the steering and my brakes. I immediately started panicking. "No, please, not out here. Don't do this now." I assumed that maybe my accessory belts had snapped, so they were old and cracked. I limped the truck to the shoulder and popped the hood. The belts were still intact. James woke up upon me slamming the hood in frustration. "What's up, man? Why are we stopped?" James croaked out in this post-sleep fog. "Oh, you know, this 200,000-mile hunk of shit just died." "Where are we?" "We passed through Middlegate about an hour ago, so the middle of jack shit." "Dude, don't be so mad. You have tools, you can fucking fix it." "I don't even know what's wrong with it. Hunk of shit." I kicked the bumper in frustration. "Dude, calm the fuck down, I'll help you fix it." "Check the fuel lines and fuel pump," James offered. fuel pump could be it, but it didn't surge. It just died. No noise, no strange signs, just dead. Maybe just try starting it. It could just be a weird hiccup. I guess that could work. I cranked the key. Nothing. Just a click from the starting relay. This is really, really weird, man, I said. This doesn't feel right. I feel oddly on edge, said James. I know what you mean. This is some the hills have eyes shit. Should we just chill in the truck until morning? Sounds kinda risky. What if a cop drives by and sees a random old Nissan that looks like it could be at home in a crackhead's driveway on the shoulder of the highway? Sounds like a recipe to get caught, man. I mean, you're right, but something feels extremely eerie. I just feel extremely creeped out. Okay, maybe can just stand by for a bit and wait for a passing motorist to help us. Sounds like a good idea. So we locked the doors and turned on the hazards. James and I waited, talking and checking our phones every once in a while. Eventually, James drifted off to sleep. I stayed awake, praying that at some point a motorist would stop by. I sat there contemplating about tonight. It had been stressful. 200,000 miles and my trusty little Frontier had only ever needed regular maintenance. It had never let me down like this. I almost obsessed over it, wondering what mechanical issue could have caused my truck to suddenly shut off the way it did. I had quite the attachment to the little red 4x4. It had gotten me everywhere I had ever needed to go reliably and without issue. When I started thinking over it more, it seemed abnormal that it would just die without any sort of warning. I had little over half a tank, and there weren't any noises that were out of place on a 20-year-old pickup truck. I had also begun thinking about just how weird it was that James had thought we plowed over someone while cruising down the highway. I hadn't seen a single soul out there. He and I stayed the hell away from drugs, and though it could have been the result of his sleepiness, he had never had strange visions before when he got tired. But hey, maybe this was the first time I had ever seen him have a strange vision in his half-asleep state. I sorta just let my mind drift off elsewhere, and eventually I fell asleep. I had a horrible night's sleep. It started as a relatively normal dream, the details of which I cannot remember. I think it may have involved a road trip to someplace grand. I woke up out of the blue. My body was completely frozen. Everything in my peripheral vision was blurry. I tried to move, but everything was completely numb. Sleep paralysis. I had gone through this before. Normally it would clear after about 5 minutes or so, and I would be able to fall asleep again. Tonight, my sleep paralysis had different ideas. Through my muffled hearing, I could hear a distinct sound, one I had heard before when I was out on the trails. It sounded like thick branches grinding away at the paint. However, the truck remained stationary. The scratching moved towards the front of the truck. I could see a tall, malnourished and heavily deformed silhouette moving by through the fogged up windshield, slowly grinding away at the clear coat of my truck. I wanted to sit up and attempt to start my truck to get away, but I was locked in place. My body felt like TV static. I fearfully looked over, my heart racing. The silhouette slowly rose at the passenger side window, many of its features cloaked by the darkness, all except for the eyes. They seemed to glow black. Even though there was no light sources nearby, its pitch black, empty eyes somehow glistened. They bored into my retinas. My heart felt like it was going to explode. It pounded in my ears. Suddenly, the creature smashed the passenger side window and grabbed James with what I could only describe as talons. Each finger was about a foot long, extremely thin and razor sharp. The talons crushed Jay's abdomen with unnatural strength as he woke up and started screaming in pure fear. Pain. It was the instinctual scream, the scream of a wild animal who had become the prey of an apex predator. It dragged him out, and as he exited, he was folded through the remainder of the window, his spine bending backwards until... snap. I bolted upright and let out probably the most blood-curdling scream I had ever let out before. I looked over and James was huddled back in the seat, wide-eyed and terrified. He looked as if he had seen the deepest, darkest nightmare he had locked away in his memory, although he was still alive. James, I apologize if I scared you, but I just had the worst experience in my entire life. Dude, you don't even know there James, please say it. Dude, James was scared, speechless. I had never seen him like this. James, I need to hear about what you saw. Dude, there was something outside. Oh fuck, what the fuck? I got goosebumps. James, what the fuck did you see? I can barely describe it. Something tall and really skinny. It's silhouette. James stammered, scared shitless. James, I don't know how to tell you this, but I had sleep paralysis and I faltered. I didn't know if I had the heart to tell him. Look, dude, I'm scared shitless. I don't know if I want to hear about it, James said. Alright, let's just try to get the fuck out of here. I put the key in the ignition, flipped on the headlights, turned the key, and to my complete surprise it cranked over. However, it didn't start. It sounded close enough though. Come on, you little red trooper, come on. I cranked it over yet again. It sputtered, but once again the engine choked and died. Maybe turn the headlights off. Stop sucking all the battery power, James suggested. I mean, I guess. I really didn't want to turn off the headlights. I was deathly afraid of what might have been out there. I gathered my courage, collected my thoughts, and turned off the headlights. I cranked it over and the oh-so-mighty four-cylinder sputtered and wheezed into life, like an asthmatic that had just finished running a mile. It didn't sound healthy, but I could limp it back to the property, where it was relatively safe. Over the sound of the poorly engine, however, I could hear scraping. It sounded like it was coming from the rear section of the truck. It sounded exactly like the scraping from my sleep paralysis. Do you hear scraping? James asked. Yeah, I do, I said, my heart rate rising faster than the revs of an F1 car. It sounds like it's coming from the tailgate. The fucking tailgate, shit! At that moment, James and I stared at one another, primal fear filling our expressions. We both turned around, staring at the fogged rear window. I slowly hit the brake lights, the scraping getting louder and louder. I could feel the brake pedal activate the brake light switch. My senses were hypersensitive. I was full in fight or flight mode. The lights came on, and in red, dim glow we saw them. The eyes, so dark and reflective that I seemed to see my own reflection in them. James and I simultaneously screamed bloody murder and floored it, spinning the tires and flying off. I could see those eyes in the mirror, sending waves of fear through my entire body. I flipped on the headlights and drove onwards, the eyes disappearing behind a turn. James and I were silent. I gripped the wheel like a vice. I buried my foot deeper into the gas pedal. The speedometer didn't dip below 90 in what felt like an eternity, till eventually James and I made it to the property. However, James and I no longer felt safe there. James, I want to go the fuck home. I don't want to stay here tonight. Yeah, no, normally I'd argue, but I think tonight is a little different. I really appreciate your willingness to get out of here. One thing, can we get to my car before we go? Sure, we have to be in and out, no delays. I don't feel safe at all. Oh, trust me, I'll be out of there in record time. We drove down the trail, which leads to his property. Each shadow made me jump. At one point a rabbit ran in front of us and I had a fucking panic attack. We made it to his property, right on the American River. The poplar trees looked ghostly. The mini skid loader that his dad had out there was oddly comforting, a sign that other humans still existed out there. I pulled up next to James' mighty G-Wagon, and we sat there for probably like 10 minutes. James was too scared to even leave the vicinity of my truck. I didn't blame him. James finally gathered the courage to leave the truck and ran to the safety of his car. As soon as he started it, we both got the fuck out of there and headed to my house. We slept in the safety and relative comfort of my room, the events of that night dissipating as soon as we entered. I slept dreamlessly that night. The next day, we sat down, both of us recalling the events of last night. James and I wanted to play it off as a nightmare so incredibly badly, but we both knew that what we saw last night was entirely real. I took him home that afternoon. As terrifying as those night's events were, we were both morbidly curious about what the hell was out there, whether it was an animal of some sort or if it was paranormal. Ever since, he and I have kept in touch. We plan on heading back out there this weekend. We will take a more solid, reliable vehicle than my little Frontier, and we will take weapons just in case. We want to get to the bottom of this, as stupid and cliche as it is. We're both too curious to just let this one go. I will update you guys with what ends up happening this weekend. Okay, update 1. Alrighty. James and I are ditching my truck at his house for the night and heading down there in his G-Wagon. It has a lot more weight behind it, just in case we need to use it as a ram. I'll update you guys once we get out to the section of the road where we encounter the creature. For now, I'm signing off.